By the way, as we look at more and more figures, images, we read text on bad things that are happening because of climate change. You are very young. The idea is not to scare you and worry about your future. There is something called climate anxiety. Lot of news every day in every language in every corner of the world saying climate change is doing this and climate change is doing that, and many kids are scared for their future, and this is called climate anxiety, and it's a serious issue. So I'm not doing the same thing here by just trying to scare you saying, the world is coming to an end, because the world is not coming to an end. I'm going to give you the background on what's happening and how we are responsible for a lot of it, and then we'll talk about what is it that you and I can do. Mostly I, because I'm older and I did a lot of things, and you are still young and you have ways to do things differently and be less harmful, and because I did so much of the damage, I should be doing more work to make your future better, and so on and so forth. So just remember, learn these things, but do not get scared. If you get scared, please talk to your parents, your brothers, sisters, neighbors, teachers, grandpa, grandma, and you can also message me, okay? But nonetheless, we need to continue to look at what's happening. So this is from Laguna Beach, California. It's called the land erosion problem that we were talking about. So if you live very close to the water, to the sea, and you are living on a cliff that is not so stable to begin with, and then you are increasing greenhouse gases and causing temperature changes and rainfall changes and so on, you will cause erosion. And look at this house, how precariously it's hanging on. Here its foundation and the soil has gone away. Would you live in this house? That's very dangerous, right? So maybe they found a way to fix it up or do something else, but this is what often happens. You do something, and to fix it you do something else, and then that only makes things worse, and so on, which is the vicious circle we talked about. Now talking about the permafrost, frozen soil that is beginning to thaw. These are some interesting figures from these various sites, Yale 360 and Smithsonian Institute and Alaska Public and so on. You can see here a road that has become very wavy because the soil has thawed here and hasn't thawed here. So this is still okay, it's not broken into pieces, but sometimes they do break into pieces. And here is a house that has sunk on one side and not on the other because the permafrost thawed on this side. The structure is still safe, similarly in this house. So many times people continue to live in them with the full knowledge that this may get worse and worse with time. Okay, so these are the things we have to worry about with climate change, global warming, increased greenhouse gases. Let's look at another example of how things are heating up. The people of an island town called Shishmaref have voted to move their village. Entire village has decided to move. It will take years and much money to do it, but they have no choice. So the people are ready. The land is going away, one man explained. What about places that are already hot? Higher temperatures are bringing changes in these areas too. Land is drying out, water resources are dwindling, which means they are decreasing. In Africa, Lake Chad sits on the edge of the Sahara Desert. Millions of people in Chad, Cameroon, Nigeria and Niger relied on the lake, once one of the largest in Africa, for drinking water, fishing and farming. But there is hardly any lake left as of now since 1963, way before you were born, or maybe even your parents were born. Lake Chad has since 1963, Lake Chad has lost nearly 90% of its water. It has shrunk because higher temperatures made the water evaporate at a faster pace. Overuse is another reason. People kept on drawing more and more water for agriculture, drinking and so on. After all, the lake provided food and water to so many. And here is another positive feedback or a vicious circle. If you warm the temperature and the atmosphere wants more moisture and it evaporates the lake and takes the moisture, then where is the positive feedback coming from? Water vapor is a greenhouse gas, which means it also traps the thermal energy that is trying to escape to space and makes the temperatures even warmer. So warmer temperatures, more evaporation, more water vapor in the atmosphere, more greenhouse gas, more warming, more evaporation. This is a positive feedback or a vicious circle. So here is Lake Chad in a schematic way in 1963 with Niger here, Nigeria and Cameroon and Chad on this side. And by the way, this lake has appeared and disappeared in the past because of natural variability, which we talked about in other sections, where the sun's energy can change or distribution of the energy can change. Glaciers can build, ice age can come, glaciers can melt by itself because the Earth's orbit can change in its tilt and its precession and its ellipticity and so on and so forth. But this we are talking about human impact, and you can see Lake Chad today, when the book was written just recently in 2022 I think, you can see Lake Chad has shrunk to these little pieces here. Niger and Nigeria and Cameroon are now getting further and further from the little water that's there, and you can imagine the conflicts that can arise. So how do climate scientists explain this global warming? It all starts with greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. I have separate podcasts already in this course, Climate for Children, Climate Kids, whatever we want to call it. Climate Kids is already used by NASA, so maybe I can call it Climate for Children. Well, by the time I'm posting this, I would have called it something, but anyway, we have talked about greenhouse gases elsewhere and why nitrogen and oxygen are not greenhouse gases and why carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide and so on are greenhouse gases and so on. So we will come back and look at measuring up. How do we measure? I think that's the next. No, this is, I'm going to add a little bit more here on glaciers as time machines before we move to something in the air as chapter 2 of the book. So I'm taking the book, I'm taking the chapters and I'm adding more details where I feel the book is not complete, just to give you more information so you can skip. So chapter 1, 2, 3 and so on are all from the book with some additional information from me. But when you say 10a or 10.1a, 10.2a and so on, those are things that I'm adding from outside the book. So they're useful, but you can skip if you want, or you may be older and this is all too simple for you, so then you can jump to asking questions on things that you did not understand or do not know from what is described here or what is explained here. Okay, so see you in the next podcast on glaciers, which is a very interesting concept on how things happen, and it's a time machine which can only go back in the past, and we'll see how that is. Okay, see you in the next podcast.